Welcome, all you sinners and sodomites, to episode 70 of Bible Stories for Atheists. I am Josh.
I'm Linz.
And we are your guides to the sacredly sadistic stories, literally littering the Bible. And in this episode, we're covering 1 Kings chapters 2 and 3. No Chronicles.
Right.
No Chronicles.
Nothing.
Not at the moment.
There was no overlap.
Not really. I think there might have been a little bit, but not enough to really warrant getting into.
Yeah.
Yeah. In this episode, we're talking a little bit more about Solomon taking over as king.
Yep.
Some more of the dirty deeds done dirt cheap to get him into position.
That's not how you say that.
What?
You have to say it the way they
Dirty deeds done dirt cheap. Dirty deeds, dungarees. Dirty jeans, dungarees. That's what I always thought it was. I think we talked about that in the podcast before, a long time ago.
Maybe.
Anyway, yeah, they yeah.
Sorry, I got you off your thought train.
So they were, doing shit. In this
Dirty
episode
deeds done dirt cheap.
Yeah, to get him to be king.
Yes.
And that's it. And we get into is he really wise?
I was to say it was the transition to him and his power, and also the laying of the foundation of him being a wise king.
Yeah,
because even before
the propaganda of him being wise,
even before he rubbed the lamp and the genie came out and gave him 3 wishes, they still kind of alluded to him being wise,
right?
And then, poof, you're wise. You make a decision about prostitutes' babies.
Yeah. Yeah.
There, I just summarized the whole chapter for you.
Yeah. And we kick off the tradition of men being in charge of women's reproduction and what happens. So strap in and strap on for episode 70. Adventures in baby splitting.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, good job. Well done.
Interesting thing. I stopped down to Gordon's the other day.
Buy some groceries.
And I overheard a customer talking to a kid that worked there. And I just overheard a few things and I just had to write them down. So I put down my groceries and opened my notes app and started typing as I heard it. Things like, you need to read a little of Proverbs every day.
Oh.
Like the book of Proverbs.
Yeah, a little bit of it every day.
Yeah. All the things that happen now happened back then.
What?
Yeah.
Okay.
Solomon was wealthy. He was, God's guy.
He's saying this to the kid at the checkout lane?
Yeah. Not the checkout lane. Like, he's literally stocking and stuff. And this guy stopped him and talked to him.
Oh my gosh.
For some reason. Yeah. Jesus came along and said, it's easier for a camel. It's easier for the needle, easier for a camel to go through a needle. And, Solomon could do it, right?
I feel like I'm so proud of you for not being like, it's a camel to get through the eye of a needle than a wealthy man to get through the gates of heaven. Come on, guy.
I don't covet, and I have millionaire friends. That was just a few things that this guy said.
Like the audacity to just talk to a stranger.
Yeah.
Who's trying to do their job and is a captive audience.
At first, I thought he was like a coworker. Like, I thought he was an older dude that worked there or something. But then I realized, he's not wearing any Gordon stuff, and that kid definitely was. And I was like, oh man, that's a tough thing to get stuck on.
Well, we've heard from Connor because he also works for the same place, just at a different location.
Right.
And he often gets stuck talking to people about things he doesn't want to talk about.
They seem to have a lot of church folks come in there to buy stuff for church
gatherings.
Events. Yeah.
You know what I learned the other day? Actually, because the instant you started talking about that, I was like, I would just tell the guy to fuck off.
Yeah.
In polite words.
Right. But when you're a 17-year-old.
Well, and like so many businesses like that are like, well, the customer's always right.
Yeah.
But you know what I learned the other day is that the full phrase is the customer is always right in matters of taste.
Is it? I've never heard that.
That is the full phrase.
In matters of taste.
In matters of taste.
Right. Not in logistics.
That's literally like you're not
pricing.
The idea is you're not as an employee. It's not your job to make judgments about the things people are getting,
right?
Because
it's the market. It's the free market.
It's their right in their taste.
Yeah.
But companies have sliced off that end part,
right?
To be the customer's always right
across the board
to get their employees to like make this part of the zeitgeist.
Yeah.
To get their employees to just deal with bullshit.
But of course, when you're the customer, that's not the actual feeling of most companies.
Right.
It's the customer's always right to the person lowest on the totem pole.
Right.
Right. But as soon as you get up to managers and stuff like that, all of a sudden they have authority to like go either way with it. It's whatever is more convenient for them suddenly.
Nobody wants to get paid shittily to work in customer service when the customers are fucking the worst.
Yeah. So you are obviously feeling a little bit better.
Yeah.
We managed to not get COVID.
I'm sick.
Yeah. You're feeling, but your throat sounds a lot better.
I don't think I sound, maybe I'm a little bit deep. Maybe I'm a little bit deeper in the way I talk.
You will be when I edit it. Who's this dude he's doing the podcast with? There we go. There it is. We did a COVID test. We are still COVID virgins.
Yes. So, the one listener that got mad at us
for making a political
statement about wearing masks.
We talked about, when we talked about masks.
Fuck you so hard.
Of all the things we talk about on here.
I know. I was like, and whatever. Josh and I both realized that we're not everyone's cup of tea, and that's fine. I knew that before this podcast.
Yeah.
Just my general life. But when I read that comment that I liked them until they started talking about masks.
Yeah.
And I'm political. Like, you clearly didn't get to the Roe versus Wade.
Right.
Where I was just full on crying about the state of our world.
Yeah.
So, if you keep listening, hopefully you made it to that one and realized that the COVID mask thing was just like the beginning.
Right. Yeah.
We're a bunch of fucking liberals over here.
Yeah. I mean, when you actually care about what happens to other people, you kind of tend to be more liberal.
A little bit, yeah. Anyway, so I'm sick, I guess.
Yeah, but luckily,
and I can't laugh, so don't be funny.
I'll try not to.
Okay. Yeah, I don't get sick very often, so when I do, it's always a shock to my system.
Yeah,
mentally, really.
Right.
Anyway,
previously on BSFA. David is getting old and full of days. He can't make body heat, so of course they get a beautiful young virgin woman named Abishag to cuddle him.
Yep.
And he has never known her sexually,
right?
According to the Bible.
Sure.
David's oldest still living son, Adonijah, was getting ready to be king, but then turns out that the plan all along was for Solomon to be king. Solomon, who is well down on the
pretty close to the bottom.
Yeah, on the list of sons. So Solomon is crowned before David is even dead. And then when Adonijah finds out that Solomon was king, he was so scared of Solomon. But Solomon showed grace and let him go. Solomon's such a great guy.
Well, he can't know bloodshed or else he can't build the house of God, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, we'll see about that.
Oh,
Yeah.
shit.
Game of Thrones 2, A Song of Sitting on the Right. David is going to be dying very soon.
Oh, no.
And so he tells Solomon to follow the laws of God and to make sure the people follow the laws and that God will be there for them as long as they follow the laws of God. Right? And we've talked about this before. A lot of this stuff was edited after the first kingdom, the northern kingdom, falls to the Babylonians. And so a lot of this stuff was rewritten to be like, well, as long as you're following the laws, then God will be on your side and stuff. David says all that to Solomon, right? And then he says this: moreover, you know also what Joab did to me, how he dealt with the two commanders of the armies of Israel, Abner and Amasa, whom he murdered, retaliating in a time of peace for blood that had been shed in war, and putting innocent blood on the belt around my waist and on the sandals on my feet. Act, therefore, according to your wisdom, but do not let his gray head go down to Sheol in peace. Deal loyally, however, with the sons of Barzillai, and let them be among those who eat at your table. For with such loyalty they met me when I fled from your brother Absalom. There is also with you Shimei, who cursed me with a terrible curse on the day when I went to Mahanaim. But when he came down to meet me at the Jordan, I swore to him by the Lord, I will not put you to death by the sword. Therefore, do not hold him guiltless, for you are a wise man. You will know what you ought to do to him, and you must bring his gray head down with blood to Sheol.
Wow.
Yeah, David's giving him like a kill list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Joab, your uncle.
Right.
Or cousin, or whatever the fuck he is.
Yeah, it would be
cousin.
It was
because it was his nephew.
It was his nephew. Yeah.
Yeah. Who did all this stuff on his own.
So they say, but obviously he was doing stuff for David.
And then I don't know who the second.
The Barzillai folks. I can't remember who they were off the top of my head too, but it's kind of like harkening back to the people who have shown up throughout the.
So they're in the good list.
Yeah.
And then the guy that's the guy
Shimei.
that yelled at him as he was leaving town.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And then he forgave him, but clearly not.
Yeah, according to this. But it's really interesting because it kind of sounds like, to me, when I read through this stuff, it feels like a lot of the writings that came previously to this were probably written at the direction of David, from his perspective, kind of. But now it feels like there's a little bit of rewriting going on to make it seem like these people deserved to be killed by Solomon as he takes the throne.
Yeah, but don't you think that it kind of because the idea was that, especially with this last guy, was that David was showing some sort of grace.
Yeah.
When he didn't need to.
Right.
And that made him a good guy.
Yeah.
But now that we're reading what he's saying.
Yeah.
Whoever put these stories together, why wouldn't they think, oh, well, this completely contradicts what David was intending to show the world in the previous stories. He's clearly not a good guy. He just holds a grudge and didn't want, he wanted the perception of himself to be good, but clearly he's not.
Right.
Good.
I think you get stuck with these, so many people already know the writings,
right?
And so you have to add it on. You can't there's only so much revision you're really able to do. And they were able to revise several times throughout history, but I get the feeling from reading this, they weren't able to revise as much as they wanted to when it was being written. So Joab killed a bunch of people for David. or David had those people killed. And Amasa was the commander of Absalom's army who was stabbed and left for dead in the field by the road as people walked by, you know. And I have a note here. Joab really is learning what a bitch it is to be employed by the aristocratic 0.1 percenters, you know.
Yeah. The fall guy.
Yeah, he's totally being turned into the fall guy for it. Also, really laying into Solomon being wise right off the bat, which is a little interesting considering a story coming up a little bit later in this episode. So anyway, David dies again, since we already read about that in Chronicles.
Right. Yep.
And none of the rest of this story about David's death and Solomon taking control appears in Chronicles. It's like the only thing that's in both, right? Chronicles cuts a lot of stuff that's considered embarrassing about the royal family out of its story. And then here's some more stuff that's not in Chronicles. Then Adonijah, son of Haggith, came to Bathsheba, Solomon's mother. She asked, "Do you come peaceably?" He said,
"Peaceably."
Then he said,
"May I have a word with you?"
She said, "Go on." He said,
"You know that the kingdom was mine, and that all Israel expected me to reign. However, the kingdom has turned about and become my brother's, for it was his from the Lord. And now I have one request to make of you. Do not refuse me."
She said to him, "Go on."
"Please ask King Solomon. He will not refuse you to give me Abishag the Shunammite as my wife."
Bathsheba said, "Very well, I will speak to the king on your behalf." So Adonijah is trying to get Abishag as his wife.
I see.
Yeah.
I'm glad you told me because honestly, I was too distracted.
By what? Yeah, it started with, it just sounded very robotic what he was saying.
Yeah.
And then as I was working on it, she says go on a few times. Go on. Like, oh, maybe she turned into that kind of a queen.
It's such a dichotomy in my head because I picture Bathsheba as being like the most beautiful woman.
Right.
And then that voice comes out of her.
Go on.
Okay, so
we talked about this in the last time that I think it was last time we talked about how Abishag was going to be playing into a further narrative about drama around stuff, because if David did know her, then sexually, if he did have sex with her, then she's kind of like a concubine of his. And as we've already established from these stories, that, you know, a son of the king getting it on with the king's concubine is kind of like declaring yourself king.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. What a weird ask, though. You want your dad's like body pillow,
cuddle buddy. Yeah.
To be your wife.
Right.
It's weird.
So, and then Bathsheba brings the request to Solomon.
Oh boy.
So Bathsheba went to King Solomon to speak with him on behalf of Adonijah. The king rose to meet her and bowed down to her. Then he sat on his throne and had a throne brought for the king's mother, and she sat on his right. Then she said, I have one small request to make of you. Do not refuse me. Let Abishag the Shunammite be given to your brother Adonijah as his wife. King Solomon answered his mother, And why do you ask for Abishag the Shunammite for Adonijah? Ask for him the kingdom as well, for he is my elder brother, and the priest Abiathar and Joab son of Zeruiah are on his side. Then King Solomon swore by the Lord, So may God do to me, and more also, for Adonijah has devised this scheme at the risk of his life. Now, therefore, as the Lord lives, who has established me and placed me on the throne of my father David, and who has made me a house as he promised, today Adonijah shall be put to death. So King Solomon sent Benaiah, he struck him down, and he died. Just like that, Adonijah's dead.
Oh, he just asked for a lady.
I know, right? That's all he did. So now that's it for apparently for siblings who are vying for the throne. Apparently Nathan, his older brother, is like just staying out of it.
I don't want to do it. I don't want
to get in the way.
I don't want it. I don't want it.
I didn't think Abishag was that good looking.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh. So do you think, I mean, obviously, like, none of this happened, but do you think
some of this probably happened?
Oh, okay. Well, do you think that Abishag, no, the brother, what's his name?
Oh, Adonijah,
thank you. There's too many A names. I'm not going to be able to discern them. Adonijah, the brother.
Yeah.
Do you think he really thought this was like a power play? Or do you think that he literally was just like, she's hot, I want her as my wife?
Right. I know it's tough to really tell what was going on, but I would imagine this was all power plays.
Why would that be a power play?
Because like I said, if
do you think that David did sleep with her then?
Yeah, and I bet David did sleep with her. I bet that Solomon had it written that he didn't, so that it wouldn't, even if she did end up with somebody else, that wouldn't be a
That doesn't make any sense, though, why he would have it written that he didn't, because that then the justification of the killing of his brother is kind of not there.
Because like, it's more than like, it would be, you know, if you're actually in that situation, nobody's looking to this writing to tell them whether or not that happened. Like if you were actually there in the moment, it would be like, there would be rumors about it and stuff like that. This is like the record that was probably written years later about what happened. You know what I mean? Sure.
But what I'm saying is, in hindsight, he chose to write that his dad never had sex with this lady.
Sure. Yeah.
Why wouldn't, and that removes the justification in hindsight of killing his brother.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So yeah. It might be that it's not, that they can't deny that he ordered it, you know, so they're just trying to make it seem as reasonable as possible.
If I were Solomon and I was writing this story or having this story written, I would have been like, yeah, my dad fucked the shit out of that lady. That it made her his.
Yeah.
I mean,
except Solomon seems to also like hold his dad in high regard. I'm guessing because
what's the
it
problem
seems
with
like
his dude fucking the shit out of that lady?
What, David?
Yeah.
Again, like I imagine to some extent it would have been like if that was the official stance, was that David had slept with her, that leaves it open to like, well, whoever she ends up marrying could like have a claim to be king, I guess.
That's not how women work in the Bible.
I know, it's weird. I don't fucking know.
I know.
It's like the only thing we're going off of
literary choice to me.
Yeah, the only thing we're going off of is the fact that when David was driven out of town because of Absalom, the oldest brother, who overthrew him,
and Absalom laid with all the concubines that were left. Yeah,
that's the only thing we're going off of for this. It seems to be some sort of callback to that, but yeah.
My play would have been like, well, I had my brother killed because clearly he was a threat because he wanted to be king. Like, nobody's arguing that, like, he was going to do that all along. Definitely, for sure. But, like, the justification of it being him asking for this lady who literally just snuggled with his dad a couple times. It meant that he needed to be killed is really weird because there's no power play there. She was literally just a fucking human pillow to him.
Right. Yeah.
And now,
according to the final story.
Yeah. So what the fuck does it matter?
I know. Yeah. That's how, like, you can clearly tell there's more.
He tried to hook up with Bathsheba, maybe, if he was like, hey, lady. Hey, hot mama. You're single now.
Hey, Solomon's mom.
Hey,
hello.
Yeah.
Ew.
We need to do something about that voice coming out of your mouth. I have a way to shut you up.
There's a reason why David never let me talk.
Oh, man.
I think this is her first time having any lines. The whole time she sounded like that.
I feel like she had lines when he first hooked up with her.
Did she? I'm not
Maybe.
sure. I'm not sure she
I
ever
don't know.
talked. She
He
might
have gone with a
I
more
feel like
delicate voice. Maybe
Yeah.
time is.
Time has really been a bitch to her.
It's a great Ben de la Creme doing Dame Judi Dench.
Yeah.
impersonation.
Dame Judi Dench is who I got to do the voiceovers.
Oh,
for.
awesome.
She was on Fiverr, so she's a national treasure.
She is a national treasure.
Yeah.
Not our nation.
Not ours, but a nation.
A nation, yeah.
Anyway. The king, I just started reading the reading. The king said to the priest Abiathar, "Go to Anathoth, to your estate, for you deserve death. But I will not at this time put you to death, because you carried the ark of the Lord God before my father David, and because you shared all in the hardships my father endured." So Solomon banished Abiathar from being priest to the Lord, thus fulfilling the word of the Lord that he had spoken concerning the house of Eli in Shiloh. I asked ChatGPT, and this is what they said. It said, not
Yeah,
they.
you humanized it.
I know.
Weird.
Yeah, it said in 1 Samuel 2:27 through 36, a man of God, you probably remember that, you might not remember the story. A man of God comes to Eli to deliver a message from the Lord, condemning Eli's household for the iniquities of his sons and foretelling the downfall of his priestly lineage. So this happened right before Samuel, kind of.
Oh, this was that one. Okay.
The priest right before Samuel.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. The really
That raised
old guy.
Samuel and stuff.
Yeah.
Yep.
Both of his kids were killed.
Yeah, they were corrupt. They
Yeah.
were taking the sacrifices for themselves.
Right.
basically. Yeah. The prophecy includes the Lord's declaration that he will rise up for himself a faithful priest. So that's who Samuel was. The prophecy begins with the narrative arc that leads to the eventual rise of Samuel as a prophet and the decline of Eli's house, fulfilling the words spoken to Eli. So this is kind of a big part of the divisions that went into the Bible being written as we know of it today. These older books where these priests said that you could practice the Hebrew rites and rituals anywhere throughout the land. And then there was these other priests in the temple in Jerusalem, or eventually becomes the temple in Jerusalem. They say you can only do that stuff at their temple. That's how you end up getting stuff like writings that look bad on Moses, but look good on Aaron, or look bad on Aaron, and look good on Moses. There's conflicting writings that are in there. Anyway, so these two groups were fighting it out. And that's kind of the interesting hidden history of the Bible that you don't really hear about too much when you go to church, is that a lot of this stuff was generated by these two groups fighting it out. And ultimately, it's the ones who, the priests who were in Jerusalem who kind of won out the culture war of it, the priests who said you could practice anywhere, they were considered heretics, essentially.
Yeah, it's real easy to obtain and maintain control when you have a power center.
Right. Yeah.
And you make people come to you.
Yep.
And you make it feel ritualistic, as opposed to being the group that's like, yeah, man, God's in the world.
Yeah.
And then everybody's just off doing their own, feeling their own things and doing their own little rituals. And there's no centralized voice of power.
Yeah.
Amongst that. Of course, the organized religion is going to be the one that prevails.
Right. Yeah.
Fucking sucks.
Yeah.
Because here we are.
Yeah.
Today. But
yeah, when the news came to Joab, for Joab had supported Adonijah, though he had not supported Absalom, Joab fled to the tent of the Lord and grasped the horns of the altar. When it was told to King Solomon, Joab has fled to the tent of the Lord and now is beside the altar, Solomon sent Benaiah, saying, "Go, strike him down." So Benaiah came to the tent of the Lord and said to him, "The king commands, come out." But he said, "No, I will die here." Then Benaiah brought the king word again, saying, "Thus said Joab, and thus he answered me." The king replied to him, "Do as he has said, strike him down and bury him, and thus take away from me and from my father's house the guilt for the blood that Joab shed without cause. The Lord will bring back his bloody deeds on his own head, because without the knowledge of my father David, he attacked and killed with the sword 2 men more righteous and better than he, Abner and Amasa. So shall their blood come back on the head of Joab and on the head of his descendants forever. But to David and his descendants and to his house and to his throne there shall be peace from the Lord forevermore." Then Benaiah went up and struck him down and killed him, and he was buried at his own house near the wilderness. The king put Benaiah over the army in his place, and the king put the priest Zadok in the place of Abiathar.
Did you kill him in the tent of the Lord?
I know, yeah, the tabernacle.
Well, that seems not right.
Right.
Oh.
It was the same as the temple before there was a temple. Like it would be like killing him in the temple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think God likes that.
You wouldn't think he would.
But it probably doesn't come up at all.
Doesn't seem to.
Yeah.
No.
Oh, listen, I don't think Joab was a good guy.
No.
Yeah. You know, I don't think he had any problems with what he was doing.
Yeah, from what they've shown.
Yeah. You know, when you watch enough TV shows about people who are contract killers and stuff like that, you know, they seem to be all right with their jobs.
Yeah.
But they are being told what to do by somebody.
Yeah.
And so is Joab. It just doesn't make any sense. I mean, clearly, obviously, he's a scapegoat.
Yes.
But when a dog pees in the house, you don't rub its nose in it 2 hours later.
Yeah.
You do it right when they do it.
Sure. I imagine in actuality, what was happening was, you know, it obviously had nothing to do with these killings.
He was not on the side of Solomon.
He was probably actively trying to make it so Solomon didn't become king.
Yeah.
For some reason.
The resistance.
Yeah, for some reason. Maybe it's because Solomon is just killing everybody as he becomes king. Maybe he wasn't.
Yeah.
I'm kind of wondering, maybe Solomon wasn't so much wise as he was psycho.
Yeah. Well, listen. When you're the 10th child of a very powerful man who ends up being the one chosen to take over, there's a good chance that you're a psychopath.
Yeah.
They're not choosing the most delicate and loving person to take over.
No,
the fucking kingdom.
That's how he's portrayed. Yeah, is that that he was this wise, gentle, kind of a gentle.
I really didn't they say the reason why? Didn't God say the reason why it was Solomon is because he was free of
bloodshed.
Yeah. But was that specific to war, or was that in general?
I think he might have said war.
Okay.
Yeah, but
your hands are no longer clean.
Yeah.
And you haven't started building the house of the Lord yet.
I guess David had some fights with outside forces, but a lot of his fighting was internal.
Yeah.
It was with Israelites, It was with other Israelites. He did have David, there was Goliath and fighting Gath and stuff like that. But a lot of it, was fighting internally.
Right.
Then the king sent and summoned Shimei to him and said, "Build yourself a house in Jerusalem and live there, and do not go out from there to any place whatever. For on the day you go out and cross the Wadi Kidron, know for certain that you shall die. Your blood shall be on your own head." And Shimei said to the king, "The sentence is fair. As my lord the king has said, so your servant will do." So Shimei lived in Jerusalem many days. But it happened at the end of 3 years that 2 of Shimei's slaves ran away to King Achish of Gath. When it was told to Shimei, "Your slaves are in Gath," Shimei arose and saddled a donkey and went to Achish to search for his slaves. Shimei went and brought his slaves from Gath. When Solomon was told that Shimei had gone from Jerusalem to Gath and returned, the king sent and summoned Shimei and said to him, "Did I not make you swear by the Lord, saying, 'You know for certain that on the day you go out and go to any place, whatever, you shall die?' And you said to me, 'The sentence is fair. I accept. Why then have you not kept your oath to the Lord and the commandment which I have charged you?' The king also said to Shimei, 'You know in your own heart all the evil that you did to my father David. So the Lord will bring back your evil on your own head. But King Solomon shall be blessed, and the throne of David shall be established before the Lord forever.' Then the king commanded Benaiah, and he went out and struck him down, and he died. So the kingdom was established in the hand of Solomon." More death and destruction.
I mean, as you pointed out, he did warn him.
He did.
He did give him the chance to not be dead.
Yes. But all the evil that he had done to
I
David,
know that I'm like, okay, why
they didn't include any of it. Like if there was,
no,
evil,
he was
like,
basically just stood by the side of the road and was like, "You suck."
yeah.
Was it?
Boo, boo, David.
Yeah,
boo.
yeah. And if you ask the person being booed, like they're probably going to say, "Yeah, totally evil."
Yeah.
But
he forgave him.
he did forgive him.
Let him live all those
He didn't
years.
forgive him.
Yeah.
It was all a ruse.
He probably did forgive him, and then they just used that as an excuse.
Yeah.
But
it's
or there was something else going on.
it feels like such an unnecessary thing to even include.
Yeah.
Other than maybe setting up Solomon as like a man of his word.
Yeah. I imagine Shimei was somehow like well known within the country for some reason, we don't really know too much about him, but
again, a failure of storytelling.
Yeah, like it's again propaganda, right? It's just going to give you whatever information you need,
right?
Like not even need what you needed back then.
Yeah,
there's no reason. The only reason why we're even reading this is because people seem to think this holds some sort of meaning to their lives today.
Yeah.
The fucking guy that was at Gordon's who thought, oh, all of the things that happened today happened back then. And it's like, well, I guess. Are you going to actually get anything out of it? Because this is all fucking lies.
Right.
Clearly propaganda lies. So like, how are you getting anything of meaning out of it?
Well, if you try real hard, Josh.
Yeah.
And have faith.
Yeah.
You can turn any story into whatever you need.
Yeah.
The only thing this story does for me, a non-believer and a non-reader of the Bible, is think like, okay, well, Solomon told the guy he was going to kill him if he left, and the guy left, and he did do it. So, like, if Solomon says he's going to do something, he's going to do it. But he's also fair because he said, here's your chance.
Mm-hmm.
All you have to do is fucking not leave Jerusalem. It didn't even sound like, at first he was like, don't leave your house. But the more you think about it, it just sounded like he can't leave Jerusalem.
Yeah.
And he was like, it's not even like I'm asking you to be under house arrest. Just don't leave this fucking city.
And he had slaves too. It's not like he was on his own or anything.
And you'll be fine. And you couldn't even do that.
Right.
So this is on you. Sorry, guy, but I'm a man of my word. And that's literally all it's not all. It doesn't sound like the way I'm saying it that it's important, but actually setting up the idea that Solomon is a man of his word and fair is super important to a propaganda machine.
Yeah. Crazy wise. As in like crazy eyes.
Oh. Yeah. Okay.
See, it's funny.
Yep.
So, Solomon marries the daughter of the Pharaoh in Egypt, which is a weird thing to do when they held you for slaves for so long. There's no story to it whatsoever. They just tell us about it. And they talk about sacrificing at high places and how that's what people used to do back then. It was kind of interesting. They kind of give him a pass on it. Like, so again, about like those priests, the two sections of priests, one group says you can sacrifice anywhere and perform the rites and rituals anywhere. Other group says you have to do it in Jerusalem. So they're saying he would go out and sacrifice at high places anywhere. As was tradition. But that's what everybody did back then. Right. And so therefore he's forgiven for it. Gotcha. Right? Even though other kings later will not be forgiven for it. At Gibeon, the Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream by night. And God said, "Ask what I should give you." And Solomon said, "You have shown great and steadfast love to your servant, my father David, because he walked before you in faithfulness, in righteousness, and in uprightness of heart toward you. And you have kept for him this great and steadfast love, and have given him a son to sit on his throne today. And now, O Lord my God, you have made your servant king in place of my father David, although I am only a little child. I do not know how to go out or come in, and your servant is in the midst of the people whom you have chosen, a great people so numerous they cannot be numbered or counted. Give your servant, therefore, an understanding mind to govern your people, able to discern between good and evil. For who can govern this great people of yours?" It pleased the Lord that Solomon had asked this. God said to him, "Because you have asked this, and have not asked for yourself long life or riches, or for the life of your enemies, but have asked for yourself understanding to discern what is right, I now do according to your word. Indeed, I give you a wise and discerning mind. No one like you has been before you, and no one like you shall arise after you. I give you also what you have not asked, both riches and honor all your life. No other king shall compare with you. If you will walk in my ways, keeping my statutes and my commandments, as your father David walked, then I will lengthen your life." Then Solomon awoke. It had been a dream. He came to Jerusalem, where he stood before the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord. He offered up burnt offerings and offerings of well-being, and provided a feast for all his servants.
Okay, before we get into it, I'm not entirely convinced you're not sending these as audition tapes for reading books on audible.com.
Yeah. More and more, I was kind of like, maybe I should do that.
Okay, first of all, when he was like, "I'm but a child," the very first thing that popped into my head was that Fred Armisen clip where he's like, "I'm a little baby. I don't have any money. I'm just a little baby."
Oh, yeah.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
I think so, yeah.
He's wearing like a big t-shirt.
Yeah.
Anyway, is God a genie?
Well, my first thought was if he were really wise, he would have wished for more wishes. So, yeah.
Well, he wasn't wise until God gave it to him.
Yeah. Yeah. And you were kind of on this, I am only a little child. That's not actually meant literally, according to ChatGPT, at least. As far as we can tell, he was an adult and he was just being.
I'm just a little baby.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do. I'm just a little baby.
Right. But yeah, God comes across as a genie in
a little bit.
Totally. no one like you has been before you, and no one like you shall arise after you. That I felt like was really bad wording. It was really poorly written, but
also it's really just saying like Solomon was the best that there ever will be.
Yeah, it's obviously putting words in the mouth of God. I don't know why that doesn't anger more people when it's like, well, it's obviously like they just put words in the mouth of God, but.
Well, yeah, considering that God knows that someday he's going to make Jesus.
Yeah, right.
And I feel
that's
like
a good point.
I feel like God would be partial to Jesus,
right?
Being his
son, biologically,
right. You know, sometime in the future, Jesus and God are going to be fighting one day, and God's going to be like, "Oh man, I just wish you were more like Solomon." And Jesus is going to be like, "You keep fucking saying that, but guess what? He's dead. Did he come back to life? I don't think so."
It's like when you have an adopted child, and then you end up having a biological child, but except in this case, like you like the adopted one more.
Yeah. There's this comic book. I think I might have mentioned it on this podcast before, but there's this comic book publisher called Ahoy, and they have this comic book that was supposed to come out, I think from Image originally, but Image, and it doesn't feel like a very Image thing to do, so maybe it was a different one, but Image was like, we can't do this because people are going to be mad, and they were already getting pushback on it. But there's a book called Second Coming, and the conceit of the book is that there's this superhero on Earth. He's like the Superman of this world.
Right.
And God decides that his son, Jesus, is not as cool as this superhero guy.
Right.
So he sends Jesus down to Earth
to learn
from how to be basically Jesus from this superhero guy. And I can't remember if this guy was like an alien or what the whole idea of that was, but it was
Outlander.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is it Outlander? Is that his name? Highlander?
The Highlander?
No, not Highlander.
Are you talking about from The Boys?
Yeah.
Oh, that doesn't feel right, but it doesn't matter because that's not who I'm talking about. He was the bad guy.
Yeah.
That guy's a bad guy. This guy was a good guy.
Okay.
Although
I was just thinking it would be funny if it turned out to be like a guy who's actually a bad guy. Like,
I haven't read it, but now I think about it, I do think maybe that like Homelander. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do think that the superhero was very quick to like dole out punishment, whereas Jesus was like, whoa, guy.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like it was clear that God wanted Jesus to be a little more like
tough,
heavy-handed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Jesus was just this hippie who loved everybody.
Right.
Like, this is a crazy statement to make
about
Christianity and God. So I could see why a comic book company would kind of shy away from it. But
we don't want to seem like Jesus was a good guy. That'll piss off his followers.
We only gave all of you Christian children bracelets that said WWJD when you were little, just to
toughen you up.
Yeah.
Because we wanted you to think, he would kick somebody's ass.
Right. Yeah.
So another thing God says here is, I give you also what you have not asked, both riches and honor. And
long life.
Yeah. And, obviously you can't be mad at a guy for having all the wealth of the land when it was given to him by God.
And he did not ask for it.
No.
Yeah.
No.
It was reward for being humble.
Yeah.
Your reward for being humble is all of the things.
Right. If you...
Hashtag blessed.
Yeah. If you will walk in my ways, keeping my statutes and commandments, as your father walked, I will lengthen your life. David was so great at walking in the way of the Lord, especially when he told his son to kill all those people on his deathbed.
Right.
You know?
I feel like there was a couple times God was really mad at David too.
Oh, there was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like when he counted everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
Because God told him to.
Right. Yeah.
Or Satan did.
Right.
Or they're the same people, you know? It's interesting because it's like, this is when David becomes wise. So maybe up to this point, Solomon. I keep saying David. Yeah, Solomon. They look so similar. Up to this point, maybe Solomon has been a little psychotic.
Yeah.
But this is when he becomes wise, is when he prays for it. So let's see how he handles a difficult situation and see if he's wise or if he's psychotic.
Oh, is this the one I know?
Later, 2 women who were prostitutes came to the king and stood before him. The one woman said, "Please, my lord,
This woman and I live in the same house, and I gave birth while she was in the house. Then, on the 3rd day after I gave birth, this woman also gave birth. We were together. There was no one else with us in the house. Only the 2 of us were in the house. Then this woman's son died in the night because she lay on him. She got up in the middle of the night and took my son from beside me while your servant slept. She laid him on her breast and laid her dead son at my breast. When I arose in the morning to nurse my son, I saw he was dead. But when I looked at him closely in the morning, clearly it was not the son I had born. But the other woman said, "No, the living son is mine, and the dead son is yours." The first said, "No, the dead son is yours, the living son is mine." So they argued before the king. Then the king said, "The one says, 'This is my son who is alive, and your son is dead,' while the other says, 'Not so, your son is dead, and my son is the living one.' So the king said, 'Bring me my sword.' And they brought a sword before the king. The king said, 'Divide the living boy in 2, then give half to one and half to the other.' But the woman whose son was alive said to the king, because compassion for her son burned within her, 'Please, my lord, give her the living boy. Certainly do not kill him.' The other said, 'It shall be neither mine nor yours. Divide it.' And then the king responded, 'Give her the living boy. Do not kill him. She is the mother.' All Israel heard of the judgment that the king had rendered, and they stood in awe of the king because they perceived that the wisdom of God was in him to execute justice." Cut the baby in half.
Yeah, so
that was his idea.
So this is the story that everybody knows.
Yeah.
And even if you're not Christian, and there are people who will tell this story as being like a sign of wisdom outside of Christianity.
Yeah.
Like this is an example that is used non-secularly.
No, secularly. It's used secularly.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's actually like it's considered, literature in a way.
Yeah.
Because that's what it should be confined to.
I
Literature.
didn't know that the reason the baby died is because the mom
laid on
it. That's fucked up.
I know. It sounds like they just didn't have they had to have cribs back then.
No.
You don't think they?
No, you just laid on the ground. Yeah, like hay piles and shit, right?
I don't. I think they had beds.
Yeah. They wouldn't have had cribs back then.
You would think they would have something.
No, there's people today who don't use cribs. They sleep in the beds with their babies.
I mean, but we have cribs
now.
You know?
Yeah, but I don't think that was a thing.
Yeah, I don't know.
Not everybody had a manger, Josh. That didn't come till later.
Yeah. Everybody had mangers. So
the
do you think this was wise or do you think it was psychotic?
I mean,
because it doesn't seem
those things need to be mutually exclusive?
Not with him, it seems.
Because like you kind of have to discern whether like he knew one of the women would be like, don't kill the baby.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like you have to know his intent, which we don't know.
Yeah.
You have to decide whether he's psychotic or wise. You have to know whether like he legitimately was like, well, let's do this.
Right.
Or if he was like,
let's do this.
Yeah. Or if he was like, well, if I say to kill the baby, one of the women will be like, no.
Right.
And that will be the mother.
Yeah.
And we don't know that. We have
what
assumed,
if both of them said no?
Right. Then what if he killed the baby?
Yeah.
Or what if both of them said, no, don't kill the baby? I see what you're saying.
Yeah. And then it's like, well, because really, what sense does it make for the other one to be like, yeah, kill the baby?
I know. Why are you even here then?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
That's the thing that doesn't make this wise.
Well,
that's the thing.
Right.
Where it's like, obviously, this is not a real story.
No.
Because the second woman wouldn't have done that.
Right.
You know, if that actually was like a legitimate thing that somebody could say, then I guess this could be kind of wise.
Right.
But like, this is only wise because it's a lie.
Because one of the women was like, yes, cut the baby in half.
Yeah.
But what would he have done if both of the women were like, fuck, kill the baby.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And like I said, you have to know his intent. Like, was his intent literally like the best thing to do in this situation was to give each of them equal share of the baby?
Right.
Or was his intent to suss out like this scenario? And because of the results, we all think that his intent was to suss out this scenario.
Right. Yeah.
But like
maybe he actually thought,
yeah,
let's just kill the baby.
like,
I don't care.
I'm like, I don't give a fuck about these prostitutes. I don't even know who let them in this door. Just fucking cut the baby in half and each give them a piece.
And then we can all go to the bed.
Yeah. And then one lady's like, no, and all right, fine. Clearly the other lady doesn't want it. If she's okay with us cutting it in half, just give it to the one that I don't even care if it's her kid or not. Like,
whoever will give me the best deal gets to have the baby.
I'm just saying, like, the one that wants it alive is probably the one that should be its mom.
Right.
That makes sense. Right, guys? We don't actually have to cut the baby in half now, do we?
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. And it could be psychopathic and wise.
I kind of wonder, like, it'll be interesting to go through reading more about Solomon, because now I'm kind of like, how wise was he? Or like,
yeah.
Like, was
Was this the only,
he actually crazy?
Was this the only example?
Yeah.
That, because it's the only story I've ever heard used to describe him as wise.
Right.
Solomon the wise.
Well, he also supposedly, but obviously didn't write the book of Proverbs.
Right.
I see. And that's considered, which is not really like from the looking through it I have done. There's not a ton of wisdom in there. Yeah. Mostly it's about just believing in God.
Sure.
And how great God is.
Sure. What do you think of the story? Like, you asked me if I think he's wise or psychopath. I'm
thinking right now, I'm thinking he's psycho.
Yeah.
And that they just propagandized him into being wise.
Right.
But like, I'm really curious as we go through these stories, more stories about him, like how much of it, like when you actually read between the lines and look past the propaganda, how much of it was them obviously like covering up, like,
right.
he had some issues or something, but maybe not.
Do you think that originally in the story, it was not a living thing, which would have made more sense, and then at some point it got changed to a baby?
That they were like,
they were arguing over
blanket or something, and we'll cut it in half.
Some sort of thing that it would make more sense to say cut it in half.
Right.
And then over time they were like, this story would be more impactful if it was a baby.
Yeah. It was bread. She killed her bread by laying on it in the night.
Yeah. Her food, her rations, but I don't know why cutting it in half would be a bad thing, and why somebody
and then she would be like, no, leave the
give
bread
it all
in
to
peace.
her. Yeah.
Yeah, it would have to be more like a blanket or something.
Right.
She killed her blanket by laying on it in the night.
Right. Or like a sheep.
She
goat.
killed her sheep.
Yeah.
Split in half. Animal. You could still eat half of it.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
She
I
killed
don't know.
it by laying on it. I'll keep going back to that part was real.
Just laid on it.
Yeah. Whatever it was, she had to have killed it by laying on it.
And it's wild to be, just speaking as a mother, like the idea of like killing my own baby by like rolling on top of it in my sleep.
Yeah.
My instinct wouldn't be to like, oh, I'm just going to swap out the babies.
Yeah.
Like there would be a moment of like remorse and crying and like there's just no way like instantaneous.
Oh, it's just the same thing.
Yeah. Instantaneously in my head, I'm just like, oh, well, I really wanted a baby and I killed this one, so I'm going to swap it out.
And she's a prostitute, so I can't imagine she was like happy about having a baby. I
don't think it mattered back then. I imagine when you went to brothels back in the day, there was a lot of just babies rolling around.
Yeah. All the men, the babies of all the men of the town.
Yeah, they all have babies at the brothel.
Baby. Yeah.
That's the real ththing you need to be afraid of is the babies in the brothels, because you don't know who's going to rise up out of nowhere and be like, no, it's me. Like in, what was it in Game of Thrones?
Yeah, Game of Thrones.
They had the brothel baby.
Yeah.
Yeah, the illegitimate child.
Although that didn't go
anywhere.
I don't think it went anywhere.
It didn't go anywhere, unfortunately.
It's another one of their dead ends.
Yeah.
That's why the Game of Thrones was so much like the Bible. Just tons of dead ends everywhere.
Lots of penises and violence.
Yeah. Dragons.
Yeah. Both did have dragons.
Yep. Better
Actually,
theology, I think.
Did the actual Bible have dragons? Or
Well, there's
is
the
it just
Leviathan.
Oh, true.
Yeah,
There's
Book of
the
Job.
Catholic story, of course, of Saint George, which is not in
Who
the Bible, but
was a dragon slayer.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
that's all the beginning of Solomon.
it's the beginning of his reign. That's the death of David. We're done with David
Yep.
now. I just realized now that I didn't put in like a next time on BSFA because I haven't looked at it yet. So I don't know what's coming up next, actually.
It's a surprise for everybody.
I kind of is. I don't know exactly what the stories are going to be, but Solomon's, getting ramped up to build the temple and stuff like that. So we're going to start getting back into the logistics around all that stuff now.
Well, that's exciting.
Yeah.
I love logistics.
It's a hoot and a hanny. Hoot and nanny. Hoot and a nanny. Hoot and nanny.
Hoot and a holler.
Hoot and a holler, too. Yeah.
Hoot and a nanny.
Hoot nanny. Isn't that a thing?
A hoot nanny is a thing.
Yeah, it's a hoot and a nanny. It's a hoot nanny.
Okay.
Anyway, this is just crashing and burning at the end. I'm just going to wrap up the episode because it needs to die.
They all lived miserably ever after. Well done. That's good. Nice.
Thank you.
Things like that make me love you even more.
Baby splitting.
I don't know why. I'm just so impressed.
Thank you.